Hello everyone, today is 16th of November. My name is Sahil and welcome to the newspaper analysis. Friends, today into the GS border, we will be taking a quote from the Kofi Annan, the former United Nations Secretary General. He had equated the education with the human right. He says, education is a human right with immense power to transform. On its foundation rests the cornerstone of freedom, democracy, and sustainable human development. So, guys, here we can see that the Kofi Annan had equated the education with the fulfillment of democracy and the democratic rights. Guys, we can utilize such an idea into the GS paper number 2, into the GS paper number 4, as well as into the essay. So, guys, that's it. And now let's take the newspaper analysis.
Now guys, first of all, let's take the overview of the articles that we will be taking up today. Guys, you can go to our Telegram channel and from there you can download the PDF notes for the daily news as well as the infographics that I use into the videos that are also being updated there into the PDF format. The link for the Telegram has been given into the description box. Now guys, the first news is with respect to the RCEP which had started. So guys, from the very scratch we'll be seeing this particular issue. Also, why India did not join it. Then guys, other news are of the political nature, not very much important with respect to our exam. Then guys, moving forward, the regional page is filled with the air quality after the Diwali and all such kind of things. Then guys, this particular article, it is talking about the ceasefire violations that are being carried by the Pakistan. However guys, with respect to the exam, much substance has not been there. Then guys, this particular article, it is talking that how the Supreme Court is taking care of the Arnab Goswami's incident and not seeing into the other issues where the much due has been there. So guys, not important, very kind of a direct comments has been made onto the Supreme Court. Then guys, this particular article again talking about the US elections, not at all important. Then guys, this particular article, it is talking about the elections into the Myanmar, so as it is a neighborhood issue, we'll be seeing it. Then guys, moving forward, this particular article, it is talking about that how the trade unions role is going down, so we'll be seeing it. Then guys, the deadlock into the US, not again important. Then guys, this particular page is filled with the regional news, not important. Then guys, as we are moving here, we can see that the sex ratios with respect to various states have been mentioned, so we will be seeing it. After that guys, here we can see that the India and US as well as the peacekeeping forces and the China's approach has been mentioned, we'll be seeing it. Then guys, this particular article, it is talking about the election reforms which have been suggested by the chief election commissioner, we'll be seeing this thing. Then guys, this particular article, it is talking about the draft social security rules which has been announced by the government, we'll see this thing. Then guys, these basically this is a very small news item, only one liner thing. Guys, the Lancet, often this name we hear, it is a very reputed medical journal which provides various findings onto the health, non-communicable disease, etc. Now the Lancet had said that a new panel needs to be made onto the diabetes because the present pandemic and diabetes, this particular relation has not been established, so a new task force is needed. Then guys, this particular news item, it is talking that how the accused people can get bail if the probe onto that them or the investigation on them is not completed into the time. So this has been said by the Supreme Court. Then guys, moving forward, so this is a showcase page, not important for our exam. Then guys, on to the world page, again the entire US election has been filled, not important. However guys, here if we see, we can see that the golden visas have been mentioned, so we'll be seeing what it is. Then guys, moving forward, as today is Monday, there is no business page. And then finally the sports page is there. After that guys, we will be moving to the PIB. Now on to the PIB, much of the information has not been carried. The PM's basically condolences, etc., the rising number of cases, just that thing. Only one important information is there, that is the united basically the Union Labor Ministry which had notified the draft rules, so we will be seeing it. Then guys, along with this, some other articles will also be taking. So this is the article from the Business Standard which is talking about the GIS which can be used into the smart cities, a very good article for the urbanization. Then guys, this particular article has been taken from the Live Mint and it is talking as how the PSCs are not the gold mine of dividend for the government. A very good article for our GS paper number 3. So guys, all these are the articles that we will be taking up today, and now let's discuss them in detail.
Now, guys, taking up the first news. So, this particular news pertains to the RCEP, that is the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, which has been started off without the Indian participation. Now, guys, first of all, let's see what is this RCEP all about. Now, guys, RCEP, it is a kind of a mega free trade agreement. Now, the free trade agreement is basically a kind of a mechanism where the participating countries they decide that they will be reducing the tariffs, the custom duties, and all such kind of things, and will not be discriminating between the domestic goods and the international originating goods. So, guys, we had seen that the RCP has been called as a mega FTA. It is because the number of the countries which are participating they are huge. It includes the 10 ASEAN countries, that is Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, Brunei, Vietnam, Laos, Myanmar, and Cambodia, along with six of the trading partners of the ASEAN, that were the China, Japan, South Korea, Australia, New Zealand, and the sixth one was the India. So, guys, this was the original plan under the RCP, that these 10 countries and these six countries will be included and a 16 country group will be formed. Now, guys, this 16 country group, if it would have been signed, it would have included the 34% of the global GDP as well as 50% of the global population. Now, guys, coming to the present news, so now the RCP has been kick-started, but it has went without the participation of India, because India had decided in last 2019 November that it will not be going forward with the RCEP. I will be coming on to that thing also. So, guys, presently there are 15 countries as India is not participating. Now, under the RCEP, the goods have been covered, the services have been covered, e-commerce, intellectual property, telecommunication, all these things have been covered, and the trade barriers will be reduced. And if we talk about the quantum of RCP without the participation of India, then 30% of the global GDP will be covered under it. Now, guys, the RCP is also historic because this is the first time that the China, Japan, and South Korea are coming under a common FTA. Earlier, they were not having a common free trade agreement. Now, guys, why India walked out of RCP in 2019? So, there are certain issues which India called that they might be having a negative impact. First of all, it is about the ratchet agreement with which India has a problem. Now, guys, the ratchet agreement, it says that if one benefit has been given, then that particular benefit cannot be taken back in any condition. So, if India had given a concession, it cannot roll back onto that concession. Now, guys, India called that such kind of a blanket ban India will not be taking, because into the fragile economic uncertain world, there might be the condition that to safeguard our indigenous manufacturers, we might have to take back the concession, but that thing was not allowed. Now, guys, also apart from the economic consideration, it is also the matter of a sovereignty, because a nation has the absolute say that what agreement it will be going into and from what it will be withdrawing. So therefore this was a problem. Then, guys, the next was the baseline. Now, guys, India wanted that the baseline of 2013-14 needs to be taken up, whereas the RCP wants that the baseline of 2019 will be taken up for the calculation of the reduction of the tariffs. Now, what has happened, I will explain by the help of an example. Now, guys, into the past few years, India had increased actually the import duties. Now, just assume that there is a car. Onto this particular car in 2013, the duty of import was 50%, and in 2019, this particular duty is supposed 70%. Now, as the FTA will be coming in place, obviously these duties have to be reduced. Now, guys, once consider that from 50% will be going to 49%, and secondly, guys, just consider from 70% we are going to 49%. So you can see that how big duty reduction will be there, and it will pose many problems to governments, tax collection, and all such kind of things. So India wanted this baseline to be shifted to 2019. Then, guys, the issue with respect to the protection of our dairy sector from the New Zealand. See, New Zealand is having a very well thriving dairy sector, and guys, if the RCP would have been signed, they would have got a free access to the Indian dairy market, and into that particular thing, our dairy farmers who are very small, who operates onto much vulnerabilities, they might would have been destroyed. Then, guys, next is the issue of the China's predatory pricing. See, often it has been said that the China used to dump the products in India, but earlier, because the RCP was not there, we would have used the countervailing duty, the anti-dumping duty, to reduce the impact of Chinese dumping practice. Now, guys, I will give you what happens here. Suppose one particular product is being manufactured in China at 10 rupees, In India, it is being manufactured at 50 rupees. Now, what China is doing, China might sell this particular product to India even at the below their manufacturing price, for example, at 8 rupees. Now, obviously, when the 8 rupee product and 50 rupee product will be there, a customer will be buying for going for this particular product. Now, this particular thing government knows is very impactful and disastrous for Indian manufacturing. So, what government does? Government imposes an anti-dumping duty onto this particular product so that its price gets increased. Now, earlier we would have done this thing, but when the RCP will be coming, the barriers have to be reduced. So, this particular thing will not be possible. And guys, as per the document of RCP, on 74% of the products, such kind of duties and custom taxes have to be reduced, and it would have impacted the India's manufacturing. Then with the China in general also, there are certain problems which are going, for example, onto the LAC sector and all other such ideological clashes which are going on. So India is had not joined the RCEP. However, guys, it has been said that if India wants to join, it can join, but a fresh negotiation has to be started up. But India had not expressed any desire to join this particular thing. So guys, this is all about this particular article, and much beyond the scope of this particular article, we had discussed the entire issues. So that's it. Now we'll be moving to the next article. Now guys, this particular article has been taken from the Mint newspaper, and it is talking about the reducing dividends into the public sector enterprises and what government's strategy is all into this particular direction. This article is important for our GS paper number 3 under the topic of public finances. Now guys, see, whenever there is any corporate, the corporate, whenever it generates the profit, that profit is divided in two parts. One part is kept as a reserve. Now this reserve money is there for further growth, for further expansion, and any other problem if it comes into the uncertain future. And one part is given as a dividend to the owners of the corporation, that is the shareholders. Now guys, when we are talking about the PSU, into the PSU, the majority shareholder is government. Therefore, PSU, whatever money they are earning as the profit, one part they keep as a reserve and other part they give as a dividend. Now guys, dividend from the PSU is an important component into the public finances. And if I tell you, around 2009 and 10, 0.33% of GDP's equivalent amount of dividend was being paid by these PSUs to the government. But now, guys, as the uncertainty is there, this dividend has been reduced to just 0.24% equivalent of GDP. So, in simple terms, it means that government is now receiving the less money into the way of the dividend, and this is not the only problem of government. Rather, government is facing the crisis on other fronts also. For example, guys, when we talk about the general tax revenue, then it has also declined, and there is actually 21.6% down collections in the period of April to September. So the tax revenue is not coming. Then guys, government every year takes a disinvestment target, that is they will be selling a share into the PSU, and this year's disinvestment target was more than 210 lakh crore rupees. But guys, actually just 2.75% of this target has been achieved. So from here also the money is not coming. So now government has said that actually we want money, so the PSUs have to give the money. Now they have just suggested that you reduce the money that you are transferring into your reserves and give us the higher dividends. Now this particular thing has been called as a problematic because guys, the reserve money is kept to face a kind of an uncertain future, and if government will be asking more of a money at the cost of the reserves, then it might have an adverse impact onto the survival of the PSUs. Now into the past few years, guys, this particular issue has been seen very rapidly. If you know, then the Reserve Bank of India also last year transferred much higher dividend to the government of India. Now guys, what are the reasons that the dividends have been fallen down? First of all, the PSUs, they are facing the intense competition from the private players, and guys, actually only into the areas where the private sector has not come, there only the profit is being generated. Then guys, if I tell you, there are nearly 249 functional PSUs, and out of it 70 are into the losses. And even large number of PSUs, even if they are earning the money, there is not enough to justify the capital which have been invested into them. So guys, actually when we total earnings from the PSUs seen out of covering the losses and the substantial ROI, the actual money is very much low. So because of these particular things, the government is not able to receive the money from the PSEs, and it has been said that once they used to be a gold mine, and now they are not playing that particular role. And guys, on to such kind of headline, a similar question can also be framed. For example, do you think that PSUs are not playing the role of the gold mine as once they used to be? Comment or critically analyze or give your reasons. So basically, please keep a hold of these particular things that we have discussed. So that's it, and now we'll be moving to the next article. Now guys, this particular article is a very good article with respect to the GS paper number 1, urbanization and the sustainable development. Now friends, first of all, let's see certain background first. Now often we know that in India the urbanization is increasing at such a high rates, which is often also called as a positive sign, because into the developing nations the urbanization at any cost increases. Now what is the response to the urbanization? We are developing our cities, but guys, there is a classical problem in India's urban development, that is the plans or the master plans, they are just being made to in seeing the present day population, the present day demands. But obviously, into coming 20 years, 30 years, this particular population, the infrastructure's demand will be increasing so high that even today's cities will not be able to respond to the challenges for the future. So therefore, it has been said that the focus of the future cities or the smart cities need to be based on planning which is formed on the basis of the evidence and data. Now guys, talking into this particular direction, what tool we can suggest when we are talking about the responsible urbanization? And that is, we should utilize the geographical information system in the planning of the master plans. Now what is this GIS? See guys, GIS means the capturing, analyzing and management of geographical data in such a way that much more comprehensive plans for the regional development can be made. Now guys, what happens into this GIS as we have talked? See, first of all, whenever you are planning to develop an urban area, you need to procure the satellite imagery. Now there are so much of the satellites, remote sensing satellites that India had launched, so this particular thing is not a problem. So from the remote sensing center, such satellite imagery can be procured. After procuring such imagery, the next step is to superimpose such imagery onto the GIS software via georeferencing. Now what it is, I will explain it into the very simple words. Guys, suppose you have taken a photo. Now this particular photo is not having any meaning. What you will be doing, you need to give the actual coordinates, the geographical coordinates to this photo, so that it can actually be placed onto the real time map. Then this is guys called as the georeferencing, that is giving the geo points to any kind of picture or any kind of such information. Now guys, after this particular thing, what needs to be done, the real time activities that are being taking place onto this particular region, they are needed to be mapped. For example, how many roads are there, whether the roads are congested or whether the roads are not that much congested, they can hold the traffic. What are the social infrastructure such as the schools, hospitals, etc. are there, what is the present population, all such kind of surveys are done extensively. So now guys, what we have a kind of a geo referenced picture. We also know that real time activities, and we also know by the help of the data that what will be the growth of the town. Now finally, a kind of a 3D image will be prepared of this particular map, onto which the future trends will be plotted. It will be plotted that what kind of infrastructure will be needed, what kind of development of the transportation needs to be there, and all such kind of things can be plotted, so that actually the city which we are developing, it is not relevant even only for today, but it is relevant even for the times to come. Now guys, there are so much of the private entities which are involved into this GIS survey of the cities, and can actually provide the proposals into which the government needs to take the steps. So it has been said that government should now be focusing on to using the GIS technologies for the preparation of the master plan, rather than just resorting to the old redundant practice of the manual survey, or just making onto the ad hocism the regional plans. So guys, this is such an idea, you can use the GIS as a reference into your answers. So that's it, and now we'll be moving to the next article. Now guys, this particular article has been clubbed from the PIB, the Hindu and the Hindu editorial. Now guys, what has happened? Actually, the government has announced the new draft rules under the Code on Social Security 2020. Now, guys, if you have been following, so many times we had discussed that government is talking about the reform into the labor law in order to improve the ease of doing business, and into that particular direction many a times we had seen that government has actually passed the four labor laws, that is the code on to the social security, the code on to the industrial relation, the code on to the wages, and the code on the safety. So today actually we are discussing the code on the social security, one among these four codes. Now it has been said by the government that actually now the unorganized sector workers, the gig workers, the platform workers, they will be getting the social security benefits such as the employee provident fund, they will be getting the benefit under the employee state insurance corporation, the maternity benefit, and all other such kind of social security benefit. Such a proposal has been kept under this particular code, and now the comments have been asked from the public. 45 days time has been given for to the public that they can give their comment. Moreover, guys, it has been also be said that there will also be a kind of an Aadhaar based self registration portal where the informal workers, unorganized workers can go and can enroll them to receive all such kind of benefits. Moreover, guys, a specific portal has also been built for the building and other construction workers who can also get all these such kind of benefits. Now this particular issue, if we see, it has been called as it is a very good step, because guys, if I tell you the data, then approximately 89% of the workers are working into the unorganized sector, and the major problem of them is that they are not getting any kind of such social security benefits. So therefore it is a very good thing into their welfare mechanisms. So guys, this is the entire issue. Now guys, there is one this particular editorial which is criticizing the government's approach to bring the labor reforms into the general. Now this particular article has actually raised some 2 3 points which are relevant for our UPSC exam. Now it has said that all the four labor laws that the government has passed, which we had discussed, and these things are undemocratic. It has been said that from very long the government is using the non-consultative path to bring the labor reforms. For example, the second labor commission was appointed in 1999, which actually gave the report in 2002. There the trade unions was not consulted. Now guys, even now when these four labor codes have been passed, they have not been carried through the consultative process with the trade unions. Moreover, not only that, even government is determined to reduce the role of the trade union. Now guys, the author of the article had said that actually the trade union has given much more democratic rights to the worker. In India, the Trade Union Act of 1926 was the one by which the workers got the right to form the trade union, and since then it had helped the workers immensely. For example, the regularization of their working hours, the protections. Basically now the employers, they cannot fire the workers at their whims and whimsies. So such kind of reforms have been won by these trade unions. Now government is deliberately reducing the role of the trade unions. For example, into the industrial relation code, it has been provided that there could be the phenomena of the deregistration of the trade union. Now this deregistration phenomena is based on very vague kind of definition. For example, it has been said that if the violation of code is done by any trade union, then they could be deregistered. Now it has been said that actually what do you mean by the violation of code, it has not been explained. So government on one hand is bringing the reforms, but on to the other hand it is also systemically killing the trade unions and all such kind of thing. So guys, this article is just a kind of a criticism which had majorly been written under the light of the present government as how they are anti-labor. But guys, such kind of politicized references are not needed. So guys, this is all about this particular article, and now we'll be moving to the next article. Now, guys, this particular article, it is talking about the recent Myanmar elections which had happened, and for our GS paper number 2, international relation neighborhood, it is important. Though the article is very generalistic, but still we need to see it to see what exactly is going on into the neighborhood. Now, guys, when we talk about the Myanmar, first of all, Myanmar got independence in 1948, and still 1962 the things were going fine. But in 1962, actually, a coup happened into the Myanmar, and after that the military dictatorship came into the Myanmar, and for nearly 50 years this military dictatorship ruled the Myanmar. Now guys, around 2011 it was decided that the free elections will be carried into the Myanmar, and the first open election were carried in 2015. and into these election, Aung San Suu Kyi came to the power. Now guys, Aung San Suu Kyi, she is the daughter of the Aung San, who was the revolutionary leader into the Myanmar and had fought for the independence for the Myanmar, but he was unfortunately assassinated. And guys, since the military dictatorship was ruling into the Myanmar, Aung San Suu Kyi was not given any considerable hold, and even a large period of time she had to spend under the house arrest also. Now guys, as in 2015 the elections were fought, she was elected as the state councillor of the Myanmar, opposition equivalent to the prime minister, and her party is the National League for Democracy. Now guys, when the Sochi was elected as the state councillor, it was expected that she will be bringing much reforms for the people of the Myanmar, will be restoring the civil liberties, will she will actually be reducing the military's power, will be working for the Rohingya crisis and all such kind of thing. But in last 5 years such kind of things have not been seen, and guys, actually the Rohingya issues has turned even more worst. Then often it has been said that the Sochi, she had provided a defense into the favor of the military journals, and no attempt has been taken to reduce her power. Now there are two type of people. On one hand, the people are saying that she need to step and need to prove her leadership because she had failed, whereas other kind of people, they say that no, she didn't had failed, rather the problems of the Myanmar are so complex that she actually cannot take any decisive step. For example, the military is still holding a very considerable stake into the parliament, and military will not allow any amendment to the constitution such a line that military's role go down. Moreover guys, three of the major ministries including the Ministry of Defense is under the control of the military, and therefore they will again make sure that no particular reform is taken which will hurt their impact. Moreover, actually the Sochi is working as a buffer between the military on one hand on and between the people onto the one hand, and this role is the maximum that she can do. Now in 2020 guys, the elections have again happened into the Myanmar, and now the decisive victory of the Aung San Suu Kyi is visible here, and now it has been said that into the next session that she is coming, she should find out the ways in which she can bring the meaningful reforms and should actually reduce the power of the military. So guys, this is all about this particular article and nothing more. I had told you that this is more of a generalistic thing, so that's it. Now we'll be moving into the next article. Now guys, this particular article, it talks about the sex ratios which have just recently been released. Now guys, such kind of social data is very important when we are writing the answers. Now first of all, the Registrar General of India, it had released the vital statistics of India based on civil registration system report. Into this particular report, sex ratio at the birth have been noted. Now guys, the sex ratio of the birth, it has been calculated as the number of female vis-a-vis the 1,000 male. Now guys, the Arunachal Pradesh has actually scored very good here, and at the Arunachal Pradesh sex ratio stands at 1084, that is 84 more girls are being born for every 1,000 boys. Guys, into this particular direction we can see the different sex ratios. For example, for Delhi it is 929, for Karnataka it is 957, for Kerala it is 963. Now guys, into this particular survey, it has been found that Manipur is actually the state which is having the worst sex ratio, that is 757. Now guys, it is even worst from the states which have been notorious onto this particular front, such as the Punjab as well as the Haryana. In Punjab it is 896, whereas into the Haryana it is 914. So guys, Manipur's sex ratio is the worst here. Now there are 16 states also which has not provided any kind of data, that is the Bihar, Jharkhand, Maharashtra, Sikkim, Uttar Pradesh and the West Bengal. Now, friends, a kind of a question comes that why Manipur is performing so bad. So, into this particular direction, guys, this problem started to emerge around 2013 and 14. And if I tell you very frankly, there is no very clear cut reason for that particular thing. But there are two speculations. Speculation number one, it has been said that actually the boys' birth are getting registered and girls' birth are not getting registered, and in a way, the boys' number go high and the girls' number, it stays very low, and the result can be seen into the worst sex ratio. Second reason for this issue is saying that actually now the Manipur is also becoming subjected to the son meta preference, that is the desirability of a son as a child. But guys, actually conclusively nothing has been identified into this particular direction. So guys, this is all about this particular thing. Please do keep this particular data of the good as well as the bad. So that's it, and now we'll be moving to the next article. Now, guys, here we can see that the former Chief Election Commission of India, that is the S.Y. Qureshi, he had talked about certain reforms which are needed into the election system of India. Now, guys, if we talk about the elections, you know that under Article number 324, the Election Commission of India had been given the responsibility to conduct the free, fair, and democratic elections, which happens to be the foundation of any functional democracy. Now, but even after so much of the reforms, we had seen that there are large problem into the electoral machinery of India. For example, the criminalization of the elections is a problem. Into this particular direction, we had even seen that when the Bihar elections has happened, 68% of the newly legislators, they are having the criminal record. Into the present Lok Sabha, 43% of the legislators, they are having the criminal record. So the criminalization of politics is a problem. Then the use of the muscle power, use of the money power, high expenditure elections, corruption after assuming the office, all these are the problems. So the election commission had suggested certain of the reforms. Now guys, first reform the election commissioner, the chief election commissioner had suggested is the ban on the opinion polls. Now first of all, guys, opinion polls, what are they? See, often there are some people, some news channels which suggest the trends as who will be winning how many seats, and these trends had actually speculated on large number of factors, that is the demographic, economical, social, political, etc. Now the opinion poll, as we are talking, they are different from the exit poll. Basically guys, exit poll is a kind of a phenomena where the trends of the elections are told onto the basis of extrapolating the information taken from the people who had given the vote. So as the person is stepping out from the polling booth, he is asked that for whom he had voted. Now onto this particular base, they basically try to project. Now the exit polls, they are banned under section 126A of the Representation of People Act 1951. So actually here it has been provided that as the polling will start, so during the entire period of polling and even after half an hour when the polling has been stopped, there cannot be any exit poll. Now guys, first of all, we need to understand what is the problem in the exit poll. See, into the human psychology, there is the concept of the social proof. Now the social proof means that when a person sees that more people are going towards one particular trend, he also gets influenced by this particular thing. And often when the exit poll are actually projecting that party A is getting the 70% of the vote, then even the person who might be originally voting for the B party, he will also end up voting for the A party. And this particular thing will not be holding a kind of a free election. So therefore the exit polls have been banned. Now though exit polls have been regularized, but onto the opinion polls, such kind of clear guidelines have not been there. Now, therefore, the S.Y. Qureshi, the Chief Election Commissioner, had said that these opinion polls also need to be banned. After that, he had actually said that more protection needs to be given to the election commissioners onto the line of chief election commissioner. So, with respect to the chief election commissioner, there is a process of the removal similar to the Supreme Court judges. But when the election commissioner are concerned, they can directly be removed if just the CEC says. So, therefore, it has been said that election commissioner, they don't feel confident into their job. So, the similar kind of constitutional protection as it has been given to the CEC, it also needs to be given to the EC. Then it has been said that the power needs to be given to election commission, that it can deregister the political parties which are not active or which might be just acting as the conduits for the money laundering. So such kind of things have been asked. Moreover guys, it has also said that now it is a high time that the VVPAT system should be implemented. Now VVPAT stands for the voter verifiable paper audit trail. Now right now we are using the EVM in which you just press the button and your vote is casted. Now guys, what happens into the VVPAT? So basically, this is the VVPAT machine. The moment you will be casting your vote, a kind of a slip will be generated, which can be seen here from this particular glass casing. Onto this particular slip, it will be written the name of the political party for which you have voted, the name of the candidate for which you have voted. So you can tally that actually your vote is going for the same party for which you desired, and then this particular slip will be falling into this particular compartment. You cannot actually take it, it will be sealed here. Now guys, these paper slips can also be utilized if there is a kind of a dispute that there is a fraud into the EVM. So basically we can count these paper slips along with the EVM vote, and therefore much of the disputes can be rectified. So many times we had seen that there are large number of political parties which had said that EVMs are rigged and all such kind of thing. So such problems can also be solved. So guys, these are the reforms which he had suggested, and you can directly utilize it into your GS paper number 2 with respect to the electoral reforms. So guys, that's it, and now we'll be moving to the next article. Now guys, this particular article, it is talking about the UN peacekeeping mission under which the UN peacekeeping forces are sent. Now guys, when we talk about the UN peacekeeping mission, it was founded in 1945 because there are large number of countries which are facing the conflict and the peace is not there. So the specific troops, that is the UN peacekeeping forces, they will be sent into these countries and they will be trying to bring the peace. Now these forces, they have also been called as the blue berets because the blue color helmets that they wear. Now, if I tell you about these UN peacekeeping forces, there are more than 1 lakh UN PKF which are contributed by the UN members. Now, guys, where this UN PKF is to be sent or not, it is decided by the United Nations Security Council, and the permission is given under the chapter number 7. Now, guys, there are so many countries into the West Asia, into the Africa, which are facing the crisis, and there these UN PKF forces are installed. Now, guys, when we talk about the UN peacekeeping mission, there are two things which are needed. The one is the troops and other is the funding. Now guys, just keep this particular thing in mind, that the rich countries, they don't want to give their forces, they give more of a funding, and the relatively less rich or the poor countries, they give more of a troops. Now into this particular direction, if we see the USA, it is giving the entire 27% of the budget of the United Nations peacekeeping mission and doesn't give any of the troops, whereas if India, we see it gives approximately 5500 troops and the budget which is contributed by India is less. Guys, 0.83% of the regular budget is given, whereas only 0.16% of the UNPKF budget is given by India. Now guys, India had actually a very good role in the UNPKF. For example, the 71 missions which have been conducted, India had participated in 51 of them. More than 2 lakh troops have been contributed by India. Now guys, into this particular direction, the third type of country comes, which is the China. Now China is giving 15% of the UN peacekeeping missions budget, as well as 2500 troops are given by the China. Now it is across all the United Nations mission and not only the UN peacekeeping. But guys, China, in order to increase its clout, has now decided that both the funding will be increased by China as well as the troop contribution will also be increased by the China, and China is aiming to become the highest contributor of the troop. So into this particular direction also, guys, we can see that the China is coming aggressively. Now guys, when we see the response of the USA and India, so first of all guys, US and India both are helping the African countries, and their forces are being trained so that they can also contribute much forces into the UN peacekeeping mission. Moreover guys, the USA is also planning to build the capacities of various Southeast Asian countries such as Vietnam so that they can also contribute their troops into the US peacekeeping missions. Now, guys, into this particular scenario, we can see that there are two things. First of all, more focus is being given to the UNPKF, PPK, which is actually a very good thing because it will be helping in bringing the much more law and order. Secondly, guys, we can also see here that the China's entry by giving more funding, more budget, it can also be seen as an attempt by China to increase its clout into the United Nations peacekeeping mission. So, guys, both the angles might be there. However, guys, this is all about this particular article. Nothing much more you need to go. Just please keep such kind of information as a reference. We can utilize it. So that's it. Now we'll be moving to the next article. Now, guys, here into this particular article, one liner concept has been given, that is the United Arab Emirates Golden Visa. Now, the Golden Visa is a kind of a long term visa which is given by the UAE to some category of people, that is the persons who are holding some specialized degree or the professional, etc. Now, guys, the UAE had said that such golden visas eligibility will be further be increased to include more category of people. Now, guys, all the people who are holding the doctorate degree, medical doctors, computer engineers, then the electronics engineer, program engineer, electrical and biotechnical engineers are eligible here. Moreover, guys, it has been said that the people specializing into some kind of a specialized degree fields such as the artificial intelligence, big data, epidemiology, as well as the one who are into the high school, they will also be given the long term golden visas. However, guys, you need not to remember the entire category that who is eligible and who is not eligible. Just keep it in mind the golden visas, which country it belong to. It belong to UAE. So, guys, that's all about the all the important articles into the today's newspapers. So that's it. I hope you are liking our discussion. Thank you so much.